Yo, I played through Nilou's story quest and really enjoyed it. This video would just be me giving my thoughts and some analysis on Nilou's character as well as her story quest, Lotos Somno chapter, Act 1, To the Wise. The premise of the story quest is that essentially Sharis, the father of Inaya, wants to shut down the Zubair theater, seemingly because Inaya is choosing to pursue the arts of the theater over academics. And so, to protect the theater and the people it supports, we help Nilou prepare to debate for the value of the Zubair theater. I think both sides make interesting points, so let's dive into them. Let's start with the points from Sharis's and the Akademiya's point of view. They don't really respect the work from the Zubair theater because the theater doesn't enhance knowledge. Knowledge is currently the end-all be-all of sumeru, and so anything that doesn't further it is seen as unnecessary and useless in the eyes of the Akademiya. I think this obsession comes from Rukkhadevata's sudden disappearance, whose death seem to have stopped all progression in knowledge. I think their desperation has made them so extreme that they disregard anything that doesn't directly relate to knowledge. Sharis argues that the theater's shows haven't been able to provide sufficient enlightenment and intellectual value for audiences, and so it's useless in the face of knowledge. What is the value of a theater that doesn't further knowledge? Slightly related is why Sharis was so hard on his daughter Inaya. As a researcher in the Akademiya, he's been heavily influenced to only focus on academics and never learned to separate his work life with his life as Inaya's father. And so when Inaya ran away to the theater, I think part of why Sharis is advocating for the demolition of the theater is to prove something to Inaya, as misplaced as it sounds. So yeah, let's move to why there is value to the Zubair theater. As any good rebuttal goes, Nilou uses Sharis's arguments to make her own counterpoints. Who gets to decide whether or not a show brings intellectual value? It shouldn't be the Akademiya, but rather it should be left up to the audience, who are consumers of the arts. They can decide for themselves whether a show has value or not. One of the main values of the arts is just how much they bring out happiness in humans. It's a feeling that's hard to describe in words. Art simply can just make people happy, and that is valuable. I think that as humans, sometimes we get so focused on our goals that we just forget the basics of life. We can get so tunnel visioned in our work that we forget to do things like taking breaks and enjoying life for what it is. This is part of what art allows. It's something that harnesses into the emotional aspects of humans, which let us relate to one another. There are more philosophical points out there, but I think the main thing is that the value of art differs from person to person, and so it's not rational to just dismiss a show just because one person doesn't like it. And so I think it's important that we find a balance. There's definitely room for both knowledge and the arts to coexist with each other. They don't need to be mutually exclusive. Even in the theater, there are times when knowledge is helpful in the arts, such as in performances where knowledge of certain techniques and culture can help make for a more relatable and well-written performance. Another example is that a book can be well-written with great plot points and yet still feel unrelatable to people. A story can have inconsistent developments and various plot holes, and yet can still tell a story that evokes interesting feelings in people and one that they can relate to. Knowledge and the arts can go hand in hand, and both enhance one another. This is furthered by Kasani's points, where he was previously very critical of the arts, but didn't feel emotionally attached when he was purely analytical. Humans have emotions, and it's important for the arts to connect with those emotions. Otherwise, we'd just be robots critiquing human work. Likewise, a show can be improved by incorporating valid and constructive criticism so that it has a better flow and can also better connect with more people. I think at the end of the debate, what I took out of it was that we should always try to find a balance between the arts and knowledge. Both are equally important, and given that Sumeru currently has an overwhelming obsession with knowledge, I hope that the city learns to have a more balanced appreciation for both knowledge and the arts, like how I think Sharis feels at the end of the quest. I wanted to finish this video by talking about Nilou a bit. One of the things that I still wanted to understand more from the Samsara incident was why Nilou was the host of the dream. On a surface level, it makes sense since she values dancing and she's a follower of Kusanali, but arguably the host could have been other followers as well, including people like Sharis, the Knight of Flowers. But after finishing playing through Nilou's Act 1 of her story quest, I think I understand and appreciate much more why Nilou was a perfect fit to be the host of the Sub-Zeru's Festival Dream, because of how Nilou's own ideals and character resonate with Kusanali's. From her character story background, she was born and raised in Sumeru City and hasn't ever left the city. Sumeru City is all she knows, kind of similar to how Nahida has been stuck in the sanctuary of Surasthana for her entire life and only knows Sumeru City. When she was 8, she saw someone dancing at the Zubair Theater and from then on fell in love with dancing and started studying under this dancer. Her first ever performance was also where she first received her vision, and since then interprets her vision as a means to help show the beauty of dancing. It's pretty cool to see her combat animations are pretty much just her dancing on the battlefield. Nilou had a very caring and supportive family growing up where her parents never really forced her into anything she didn't like, only wanting her to be happy. This is great, but it's a bit sad to me when this kind of parenting was considered special, because of how knowledge is seen as the end-all be-all of Sumeru. It is common for parents to force their kids into academia and scholarship, regardless of what their kids feel. This has been a clear dichotomy since we entered Sumeru, the idea of the subjective nature of art versus the concrete and rational nature of knowledge. Sumeru currently values the latter, and so I think it's fair to say that Nilou was lucky to have had such supportive and great parents. And that's why I think it's interesting that in her story quest, the main conflict revolves around this dichotomy, focusing on Inaya, who had the opposite kind of upbringing, where she had been forced by her father Sharis to be as scholarly as possible, despite her wanting to look to the arts. I really liked how Nilou was presented in the story quest. We saw more of her bubbly and kind nature, but also see how she becomes more knowledgeable and confident through the debate. She hasn't debated before, but she was able to use the feelings and values of the people in the Zubair Theater to give what I felt to be a rather reasonable argument as to why the theater is so important. It also leaves a lot of room for more character development from her, where I'm curious to see how Nilou will improve her dancing through knowledge. I think her love for dancing and, more importantly, her want to make people happy makes her such a great fit for embracing Kusanali's ideals, because these are things that Kusanali also values. Not only does Kusanali value dancing and making people happy, she goes out of her way to try and help people in Sumeru, which is similar, I think, to what the Zubair Theater is for many people. It's a safe space where people can freely enjoy the arts and grow as people. So yeah, I just really found myself appreciating Nilou's character more, and why it makes so much more sense to me that she is also a follower of Kusanali, because she naturally believes in Kusanali's ideals. So it really does make perfect sense why Nilou was the host of the Samsara. So yeah, I overall liked the short story that was told during this quest. I appreciate Nilou's character more, especially through her debate, as well as enjoying the short side plot of the relationship between Sharis and Inaya, which I'm sure they can rekindle. I like story quests that tend to have the main character help solve a problem and grow as a result. I know that we'll be seeing Nilou in 3.2's Archon quest, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. And that's it for this video, so as always, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.